In the last few episodes, we've been looking at iconic rock artists who've been around for the last 6 or 7 decades, putting out incredible music. We looked at the music that Bob Dylan has put out through the decades. We looked at what Neil Young put out through the decades. And we've just wrapped up looking at what Paul McCartney has done through the decades. Well, now we're going to turn our attention to another iconic rocker who has only been doing it for 6 decades, doesn't have near the output of the other artists, but what incredible anthems and love songs and live shows he's given us. Bruce Springsteen was born the same year that I was, in 1949. He was born in New Jersey. I was born in Illinois. But we both shared an incredible experience, which millions of kids did, in that we both saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. And we knew at that moment what we wanted to do. We wanted to get a guitar and rock on. And as Bruce says later, he says, I got a guitar and I learned how to make it talk. Yeah, he sure did. We're going to talk about the boss, Bruce Springsteen, and the incredible music he's created through the decades. Are you ready? Then let's drop the needle. Oh, by the way, I just had one of you ask me why this is called Drop the Needle when I never drop the needle. Well, as I've said many times in past episodes, I can't do that on YouTube. I thought when I started this I would play snippets of the songs to illustrate what we were talking about. But you can't do that on YouTube, and I understand it. It's for copyright issues. So for a long time I was extremely frustrated, but that's why I include a Spotify playlist at the end of each episode. So now you know why the needle drops, but we don't actually hear the music. With his guitar firmly in hand, Bruce goes out and forms a band. His first band was called the Rogues, and he became the lead singer for the Castiles. Then he was in a power trio called Earth. Then he joined a band called Child, which changed its name to Steel Mill. Now, it is with Steel Mill that Bruce and his cohorts start to get some attention along the Jersey Shore. It would take Bruce a while to hit it big, but by gosh, when he did, he hit it huge. Bruce's big start happens in May of 1972 when he auditions for a guy at Columbia Records. The guy happened to be John Hammond, who had just recently signed Bob Dylan. On Hammond's recommendation, they did sign Bruce. Now, the execs at Columbia really thought they had signed the next Bob Dylan, and they expected Bruce's first album to be acoustic. But Bruce had other ideas. So he surrounded himself with his friends from New Jersey. The band consisted of Clarence Clemens on sax, Vinnie Lopez on drums, David Sancius on keyboards, and Gary Talent on bass, many of who would become part of the E Street Band. And he recorded his first album, which was called Greetings from Ashbury Park, New Jersey. The album was released in January 1973. Now, as I said, Columbia wanted an acoustic album, but Bruce wanted band songs. But Columbia didn't hear any hit singles, so Bruce very promptly wrote 2 new songs, Blinded by the Light and Spirit in the Night. Now, particularly Blinded by the Light fueled that sense that Bruce was the next Bob Dylan. But it wasn't a hit for Bruce Springsteen, so Manfred Mann decided to cover it, changed it a bit, and made it a hit. Critics loved the album and really praised Bruce as the next Bob Dylan. Now, I liked the album as well, but it did not really find an audience. 9 months later, Bruce releases his second album, The Wild, the Innocent, and the E Street Shuffle. And with this album, he goes full out on the full band sound. I like the E Street Shuffle, 4th of July, Asbury Park, Sandy, Kitty's Back, Incident on 57th Street, and of course, the great Rosalita, Come Out Tonight. Now, once again, critics loved this album, but once again, it didn't sell. So Bruce had 2 albums on Columbia that didn't sell. And to make matters worse, John Hammond and Clive Davis had left Columbia and they were Bruce's strongest supporters inside the label. Bruce was in a pretty dangerous situation. He had to have a hit with his next album, or he was going to lose his recording contract. To build up Bruce's and the band's chops, they continued to play live, and in February of 1974, a new club opened up in Asbury Park called the Stone Pony, and Bruce and the band played there frequently. And then in 1974, they decided to make a trek out to LA, where they played at the famous Troubadour, but they were third on the bill and didn't appear until very, very late at night. And in May, the band decides to go up to Boston to play at Harvard Square, and in the audience is music critic John Landau. And so he wrote a review of the performance, in which he says the prophetic line, "I've seen rock and roll's future, and its name is Bruce Springsteen." So naturally, John Landau and Bruce become friends, and it's decided that John will help produce the next album. Now remember, this album is a make or break album for Bruce Springsteen. And so he toils and toils on the production of this album. He wants it to be a big wall of sound type of production. It takes 18 months to record the album, and it's said it took 6 months just to record the title track. The members of the E Street Band on this record are the big man, Clarence Clemens on sax, Danny Federici on organ, David Sanchez on piano, Gary Talent on bass, and Ernest Carter on drums. Now, Sanchez and Carter left the same month as the album was finished, and they were replaced by Roy Britton on piano and Max, or Mighty Max, Weinberg on drums. And then Miami Steve Von Zandt, a friend of Bruce's, joins the band as well. Bruce's third album was called Born to Run. It had to be a hit, and boy, was it ever. The band went back on the road, and the album was mastered while they were touring. So the master tapes were sent to Bruce to approve while they were out on tour, and it said the first master he got, he was so disgusted with it, he threw the tape into the swimming pool of the motel that they were staying in. Finally, they get a mix that Bruce approves, and the album is released in August of 1975. Now, to say Born to Run was a hit is a real understatement. Now, Bruce has said he wanted the album to sound like Roy Orbison singing Bob Dylan, produced by Phil Spector. I think he probably accomplished that, but what he actually did was create an album that sounded like pure Bruce Springsteen. They're all great tracks. I mean, it starts with the tremendous Thunder Road, then you get 10th Avenue Freeze Out, and Backstreets, and of course the title track, Born to Run, and it closes with one of my favorites, Jungle Land. The album soared to #1 in the US and 17 in the UK. Born to Run saved Bruce Springsteen's career and vaulted him into superstardom. And the record label decided to spend a lot of money to promote it. And then something unique happened in the print publishing world. Bruce Springsteen appeared on both the cover of Time and Newsweek magazines, which were the big magazines of the time, on the same week. The magazines came out in October of 1975. It was huge, but it also prompted a backlash, where people started saying that Bruce had sold out. Now, on November 1st of 1975, Bruce and the band are going to play at UC Santa Barbara at the Robertson Gymnasium. Well, not too far from LA, so my good friend Jim Stadell and I are both Springsteen fans at this point. We want to see how well he's come along, and so we decide we're going to drive up to Santa Barbara for the concert. And we saw them play in a gymnasium. It blew us both away. Amazing show. His live shows were already incredible. But because of legal hassles with his manager, Bruce could not record again for at least a year. So what he did is he kept the band on tour, playing show after show after show, getting better and better and better, and the shows just kept getting longer and longer and longer. When he finally can get back in the studio, Bruce starts work on his fourth album, which is called Darkness on the Edge of Town. And here he decides to drop the wall of sound kind of production and just focus on the band as a unit. And the album is released in 1978. Now, it was originally going to be called Badlands, which is the great opening track. I also like Adam Raised a Cain, Candy's Room, The Promised Land, Prove It All Night, and the title track, Darkness on the Edge of Town. Bruce was still smarting over all the media backlash that happened from the promotion of the Born to Run album, so he told his label not to over-promote Darkness on the Edge of Town. And generally, the label went along with that. But they made one big mistake. They decided to take a billboard on LA's famous Sunset Strip, which, at the time was having all the rock and roll billboards, to promote the album. Well, when Bruce and the band saw that, they climbed up onto the billboard and defaced it. The album did not match the success of Born to Run, but it did reach 5 in the US and 4 in the UK. And Bruce took the band back out on the road to support the album on a tour that included 112 shows. In September of 1979, Bruce and the band joined Musicians United for Safe Energy at Madison Square Garden. The album that comes out is released as No Nukes, and it includes the first official recordings of Bruce's amazing live set. So after signing his record contract, in the 70s, Bruce has released 5 albums. And notice how the growth of the artist and the band is reflected in these albums. Now, as usual, I've created a Spotify playlist where you can listen to some of the songs that I've talked about in this episode. And here's the link, and I'll also put it in the comments below. In our next episode, we'll look at the music that Bruce releases in the 1980s. And it's getting to be a wild ride. So Wendy, climb in. It's a town full of losers, but we're pulling out of here to win. Thanks for watching. Keep a rockin'.
If you liked this episode, hit the like button, and you can also leave me a comment down below, and I'll respond to you. If you subscribe, we'll let you know when future episodes come out.